Good morning. Today is February 6, 2024, and this meeting of the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues is now called to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Rusing,
Here.
Member Gambogi,
Present.
Member Fruworth.
Here.
Okay, and then item number 3, Nettie.
Public comment will be accepted following each agenda item and are limited to 3 minutes. Please complete a comment card and return to the city clerk. Speakers will be called in order received. We do not have any public comment at this time.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody here in the room and also people that are watching our meeting remotely. Thank you very much. I would just like to take a few minutes to remember Mr. Ed Wolf. We went to his remembrance a couple of weeks ago, and he was very instrumental in CWAG, and he was very helpful to me as an elected official to educate me about water based on facts and data. And he was a well-respected geologist who worked for USGS, that's right, in actually mapping volcanoes. But when he came here, he did a study, and it totally debunked the clay plug theory. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to remember him and all the hard work he did and his love of Prescott. Thank you. Let's move on to item number 4A.
Approval of the revised November 7, 2023 Water Issues Subcommittee meeting minutes.
Do I hear any changes?
Chairman Rusing, I have to ask the staff, does this accurately represent what took place in November?
Hello, Brian Reese, Water Resources and Environmental Services Manager for the city. Councilman Gambogi, could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I understood it correctly.
This water committee wasn't put together back in November. It was the old water committee, so neither Lois or I were in attendance at that meeting. So my question is, in order for us to vote on it, you need to assure me that that accurately reflected what took place in that meeting.
Yes, yes, Councilman. We went back over it a couple different times, changed a little bit of the verbiage to make sure it clearly, more clearly represented the conversation that was having at that meeting, and we feel very confident that those meeting notes capture that meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Ready for?
I move to approve the minutes of November 7th, 2023.
Second. And we can't do this electronically, so we'll have to call it.
Here it is.
Did we bring it up? Oh, yeah, great. Thanks, Nettie.
Passes 3-0.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Approval of the December 5th, 2023 Water Issues Subcommittee meeting minutes.
Any discussion?
Again, because I was not at the December meeting, just wanted to make sure you two felt confident that this represented the discussion that day before I vote.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the December 5th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
Passes 3-0.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Presentation and discussion regarding an overview of the 2023 yearly water budget.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Brian Reese again, Water Resources Environmental Services Manager for the City of Prescott. The current water policy sets water budget at at a biannual rate between January and June, and again for July through December. So in this, we'll have regular presentations for you in December and in June, where we discuss the current 6-month period, how much water was allocated, and projected, how much water we have projected over the next 6 months based on projects that community development and planning have seen come in, various departments in the city and how they've, so that we can give that information to use to know how that might impact water budget for another period. So we just had that meeting in December, or that presentation in December. This presentation is a little bit different. We went and took the entire water that we allocated in 2023, and I just have a short presentation for you today on how that water was distributed over that period and how it was used. So for 2023, we had a total water allocation that went through council. Or administratively approved of 161.25 acre feet. That was distributed over 120 total water requests. So this pie graph kind of just breaks it down into the two major groups of non-residential and residential. So as you can see, residential was the majority of the water, 132.25 acre feet, and 82 represents 82% of the total water that was allocated for the year. Non-residential at 29 acre feet and representing 18% of the water allocation.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yes.
Is that new applications, or is that all currently today?
All water, whether it was new application or whether it was administratively approved under contract. Yes, it's the total water for the year. So this graph further breaks it down into some more of the types. As you see with my next presentation coming up, and as we do at every WIS, I'll give a budget overview of what happened for the past month. And in that, we'll break it down into 3 categories. We'll have the residential category, the non-residential category, and the existing contract category. So this graph captures all of those and added the appeal category too on there, so that can kind of give an overall by type how the water was distributed. So as you can see, existing contracts make up the majority of the water that was given out in 2023, 76.7% of, 76.7 acre feet, representing 48% of all the water that was given out. Residential then was 27% of the water given, and then non-residential made up 18%. I broke this down into the appeals category. We had 1 appeal in 2023, representing about 7% of the water that was given. That appeal fell in the residential category. It was for an apartment complex. So this just kind of shows a little bit how the water is breaking down by those categories.
Hi, Brian.
Yes.
Just a question on the appeal. Was that something that the council was unanimous about? Was it related to strategy and therefore it went forward because of the greater than 50% rule? Is that the
Yes,
circumstances?
That's the circumstances. At the time that the application came through, the water request was over 50% of the remaining water in the budget. So it had to go through WIS, this committee first, and they approved it. I believe it was unanimous to take it to council, to recommend approval to council. And then I do believe council approved it unanimously too.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So our next slide is just concentrating on the residential water. So that residential water was represented by 132.25 acre feet of the total water. And we had 95 individual or total water requests. 79 of those were for one lot, single family residential. So basically within a existing subdivision, and the lots were coming in for and requesting the water for that individual lot. 2 multi-lot single-family residential divisions were captured in there, and then 14 multifamily residential requests came through. So, and the slide shows that even though there's many more requests on the single-family residential side of it, by total water, multifamily was by far the biggest allotment in 2023, representing 88% of the water given out from the residential category, and then single family at about 12%.
Yeah, and I would just like to comment that the multifamily, the bulk of it is infill, and the plan is to assist the community with providing more housing for our workforce, and hopefully by that will bring the rents down if we have more vacancies. So, and going back to the appeal, was that for the IGA with the VA to provide housing for the homeless veterans out there?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it was a project, Plaza Apartment Complex. That name might not be quite correct,
Okay.
but it was over off of Willow Creek, and it was an apartment complex,
Okay,
proposed apartment complex project off of Willow Creek.
okay, all righty, thank you.
Okay, this slide represents the non-residential side of it. So broke it up into several categories just to help try to get an idea of where the water kind of went. So we had 29 acre feet allocated out of non-residential with 25 requests. As shown on the slide, the largest allocation by far went to hotels, 77%, and then restaurants and bars made up 7% of the allocations. Kind of general retail and office, 6%. Services included things like banks and event centers, things like that, representing 3%. Medical, there was only one medical application representing about 1%. And then the other category at 6% kind of represents everything that doesn't fall nicely into those other categories. Church, there was a couple of church extensions or improvements, a warehouse, things of that nature, things that just didn't fall into those other categories nicely. And then last slide here for you. I just thought you'd like to know how much water was being allocated by municipalities. As you're probably aware, our service area for water extends past our city boundary and our city limits. We serve portions in Yavapai County and portions of population in Chino Valley. So a slide shows that out of the total 161.25 acre feet that was allocated in 2023, 158.75 acre feet was within the city limits of Prescott. 1.5 acre feet within Yavapai County, and 1 acre foot was given out for Chino Valley. So total requests for Yavapai County, 6. And total requests in Chino Valley were 4. So that concludes my presentation today. This is just basic information to try to get an understanding of water is going, and we'll try to keep it up on an annual basis and expand on it in the future too with other information that we feel might be relevant for this committee to go ahead and understand what they need to do for allocations, water budgets, and making those types of decisions.
Okay.
If there's any questions?
Could you email us your PowerPoint presentation? Thank you.
Definitely will.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next item.
Presentation and discussion regarding the 2022 water management policy. Current residential and non-residential water budget overview for January 1st, 2024 through January 24th, 2024.
Okay, and hello again, everybody. For the record, I'm Brian Reese, Water Resources and Environmental Service Manager for the City of Prescott. And we have the presentation here for you on the 2022 Water Management Policy, current residential and non-residential budget overview for January 1st through January 24th, 2024. So per the 2022 water policy, policies number 11 through 13, establishes that a semi-annual water budget for residential and non-residential projects will be set. The budget set for January 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2024 for residential projects was 25 acre feet. And the budget for non-residential projects for that period was also set at 25 acre feet. So our first slide here, our first slide for you is not the one I want. There we go. Shows the residential projects through that period, January 1st through January 24th of this year. And during that period, we had no new residential projects come through. So no budget was allocated out, and 25 acre feet still remains for this period. This slide shows the non-residential or commercial projects for the time period. So again, for the same time period through January 24th of this year, there was one non-residential project that was approved. The project was less than the 1 acre foot threshold, so it was administratively approved, did not come through this committee. So leaving 24.3 acre feet left in this budget period.
Chairwoman, may I ask a question?
Lois?
Yeah, Brian, just a question or a request going forward. Would it be possible in the description, rather than just saying new commercial, could you give us the name of the project or the address of the project? This way it really helps us keep track when we're reviewing other things in other meetings for other discussions that the water's been handled. So that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. I looked up this project before the meeting, and just to let you know, for your information, this project was the Strategic Academic Flight Education Safe Complex. It's located over at the airport, Embry-Riddle
And
building.
very important that we approve the water, so thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for asking that question. But in the past, we've usually haven't we had a description on the charts of
I think
projects?
I think that description has been a little bit. Sometimes it's been helpful, and sometimes not so helpful. So we'll go ahead and make sure that we're kind of consistently providing some information that can give some understanding of what the project is.
Yeah, because that's a very exciting project, and I'm glad to see that it's moving forward. Also, let me ask you about our Old City Hall commercial redevelopment. That's going to be moving through the process, and I believe we already approved water for it with the original developers, but now that it's under a different group, does that still stand, or do they have to reapply all over again?
My understanding is that negotiations for the new developer are either underway or ongoing, but that the water is being taken care of in their contract. Yeah, so that they are negotiating that with the current developer.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then this table shows the projects that were administratively approved. So there were 6 projects in all of them single-family residential groundwater subdivisions. So As you can see, the total comes out to 1.1 acre feet. And per policy, the projects under existing contract do not come out of the budget. So these are independent of the budget.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. Another project that's coming through the process is the Storm Ranch, and I believe that's already committed water, that they've already got the water, right?
Yeah, there is a water service agreement in place for Storm Ranch, correct.
All righty, thank you.
Just for my learning purposes, I was really familiar with 0.17, but what's the one project at 0.25? Why would that be different?
That project is probably located either in Yavapai County or Chino Valley. We allocate water in Chino Valley per the water service agreements and various contracts we have at Chino Valley at a slightly higher rate. This provides a slight buffer that can account for additional water use. It also can provide for like supporting services in the area. So that rate is just a slightly higher than what we use for our internal city allocation rate at this point in time.
Okay, I'm good with you saying it's per contract, but it's interesting.
Thank you for that question, Lois. I did not know that. I thought that we allocated the same no matter whether they were in the city or out in Chino or in the county.
Yeah, so with the Chino Valley agreements, I think we have it stipulated what that allocation rate is, but then in our more current policies with the use of our water resource management model, it was determined in the 2022 policy to move to the 0.17 for residential moving forward because of the information that model is showing us at this point.
Councilwoman Lois?
One more question. Again, similar to what I asked with commercial, could we possibly in the future have either the address or the homeowner or some kind of identification just so we have a record of what we've approved? If when we get asked questions, we can go find the information without bothering everyone.
We will do that. Okay, and that's basically completes that presentation. If there are any other questions at this point in time.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, next item.
Presentation and review regarding the calendar year 2023 Water Conservation Rebate Program.
Good morning, Subcommittee.
Good morning.
Kay Sitto, City of Prescott, Water Resources Project Manager. Next slide, please. So the topics that we're going to cover today are toilets, our CEE ultra efficient washing machine list, turf removal, rainwater cisterns and barrels, rain gardens, WaterSense labeled smart irrigation timers, commercial urinals, and the hot water recirculation system. Oh. Okay. So our first slide I've summarized for the year, the 1.28 gallons per single flush toilets, the 1.28 gallon dual flush toilets, and the 1.0 gallon single flush toilets. And you can see that we've had a pretty successful year. 100 customers ordered 158 units of our 1.28 single gallon flush toilets. We had 4 customers purchase the 6 of the dual flush toilets, and 6 customers purchased 10 of our 1.0 gallon per single flush toilets. And if you add all that up,
Councilman Gambogi,
oh,
a question?
What's What's an old toilet in terms of gallons?
Well, some of them are 1.6, and some of them are even older than that. And so we're really happy when we see some of these ones that are over 2 gallons and more. Some are even 2.5 gallons that get replaced.
And I have a question, Kay. When you talk about customers, is this just residents, or do you have builders, contractors, businesses?
We have very few businesses, and I think just a few of them have put in some commercial urinals. So that's one of the parts of the program that hasn't been as successful as we'd like to see it be. I know we need to do some more advertising in that. Yeah. So each toilet saves 7,200 gallons a year, and it should be also mentioned that if a customer is on a septic system, they get an additional $50. And so you can see that we have a column for septic users. So there were 21 septic users for the single flush toilets, 2 for the 1.0, 1.28 dual flush, and 0 for the 1.0 gallons. Our ultra-efficient washing machines that must be on the CEE approved list from January to December, 59 units. That's a really good number. We rebated $12,550, and we saved over 241,900 gallons. And of those customers, 13 were on septic systems, so they got the additional $50. For turf removal, in November of 2022, the turf removal rebate was increased from 50 cents to $1. So for calendar year 2023, for the first time, we have that one-to-one relationship of the number of acre feet removed and the number of dollars rebated. So it's the same, square footage and dollars rebated. It's equal in number.
Kay, I have a question on the turf removal.
Yes.
Was that single-family homes, or was it HOAs, or who was that?
Didn't have any HOAs this year, but and I should also mention that there is no limit on the amount of turf that can be rebated, up to $2,500. So that's the one exception to the $2,500 rule. So rainwater cisterns, from January to December, we had 14 customers. We rebated almost $5,000, and we saved 115,125 gallons. So the one good thing about...
Councilman Gambogi?
Oh, yes, sir?
How's that all calculated, Kay? You get $1 rebated on what?
Well, you get $1 back if you have a 75-gallon or larger capacity, but there's a minimum requirement of 100 gallons. So people can purchase 2 50-gallon gallon capacity rain barrels to get up to the $1.
And is that $1 against the price of the barrel, or $1 against your water bill?
It's $1 against the water bill, so that's where the extra $1 comes back in. So the maximum rebate here is $500, but I did want to mention that the gallons saved actually reflects an overage. So, for example, if a customer, say they had up to $500 maximum use, they would still be able to claim more in the gallons saved. So, for example, in July, we had a customer who saved $500. They got the maximum, but they actually had a greater increase in gallons saved because it reflects the extra size of the rain barrels. Okay. So the same can be said for the rain gardens. Rain gardens are calculated $1 per square foot. And again, the maximum rebate for rain gardens is $500. But we only had 2 this year. And if you look, for example, at the first one done in March, the maximum rebated was $500. But you can see that the gallons saved actually exceeds that amount because they had a larger rain garden. They just didn't, they reached their maximum.
Chairwoman, I have a question.
Yes, Lois.
Okay, the gallons saved, are you actually looking at their water bills to see that and compare that, or is that a calculated?
That's calculated on a report that we get generated by calendar year. And so it just shows up in there as how much the extra water they saved. But the rebate is actually still going to only be $500. They're not going to show the gallons saved on there.
But it's calculated based upon actual usage year over year for that one customer?
Yes,
Did that?
the
That's
500.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, we have questions here.
Just for clarification, the gallon saves are approximates based on estimates of formula.
Okay, so that's not actually saved year
Yeah,
over
exactly.
year.
We're not- yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I still like the numbers.
But the customer can calculate it.
Yes, they can.
Yes, that would be good table talk. Okay.
We had 28 customers purchase smart irrigation timers this past year. They were rebated $2,100, and the gallons saved was 235,600 gallons saved. So each irrigation timer saves 7,600 gallons, and that's one of our higher rebates.
Yeah, I just would like to reiterate that we spend most of our potable water outside watering the landscape.
Right.
Thank you. So if we can save on outside, that really makes a big difference.
I agree. It's good. I like seeing these numbers too. So commercial urinals, we did have 3 customers. You know what? This was one customer did purchase 3 urinals in the Fremont building. I'd forgotten that. So the Fremont building did purchase 3 commercial urinals. And they were rebated $300, and they saved 6,240 gallons.
Yeah. Can you jog my memory? The Fremont building, is that an office complex?
Yes, it's on McCormick. It's on South McCormick Avenue,
Okay.
the Fremont building.
Okay. All right. Got it.
They replaced turf also, but that's in this year's 2024, in January, that they replaced the turf. So our hot water recirculation system, we had 22 new customers. They were rebated $3,300. They saved 36,000 gallons of water. And each hot water recirculation system saves 1,650 gallons, 1,650 gallons.
I have one at my house, and I love it. Does anyone else have one of those, Lois? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, how about that? Good for us.
So the total rebate, total dollars rebated in calendar year 2023, $61,148. And total gallons saved in the same calendar year, 2,464,674 gallons. And we should emphasize that this is cumulative, so we're saving even more with each passing year.
Can you?
I'd also like to.
Excuse me. Can you quickly calculate how many acre feet that is? I was looking at maybe 7.5. Okay. Thank you.
And I did also want to mention that that we will be increasing the budget this next year in fiscal year 2024, right? Yes. Okay. Due to increased interest in the rebate program.
Well, thank you, and I'm sure that's due to you're doing such a wonderful job getting the word out.
Well, I like to think
and our new
so.
website.
Well, we did. Yes, that was on our December messaging bill, and about the new website. So we are trying to get the word out. That's true. Does anybody else have any questions?
I just had one point. I know this coming Saturday, CWAG is running the first time they've done a face-to-face meeting in a long time, and they're talking exactly about rainwater barrels and those kind of garden systems and stuff. And I just want to make sure that if there's any material that we can take there to push even and support CWAG's mission from the city, that would be a really good tie-in. Because it is this Saturday.
Would you like a copy of my presentation then?
Yeah, we'll take the whole presentation. But
Okay.
is there like a write-up, a one-pager we could hand people and how to...
Okay.
Yes, we'll get you all the information that we have.
I think if every single council member, if every time we're on the radio, we should bring this up. We should talk about this. We should be for example, I would love to bring this to the Prescott Downtown Partnership at their next meeting in February, because if we can get some of the downtown businesses to update their toilets or urinals, et cetera, I think that's great. So the more we can have items to carry in our packets with us and push it everywhere we go. I saw that if we overextend the 2024 budget of $40,000, that the city manager has approval to increase it, and so I was glad to see that there's someone who will help us with approving an increase in budget. My goal is to blow away the $40,000 personally, so let's go.
And I did do a radio program back in October with Sandy Griffiths. So, and that's what we talked about was the rebate program then. So
But even every time, like I've got another radio show coming up in a week and a half, even taking 1 or 2 minutes to plug it, from everybody plugging it, we could get the word out and get going. So I love the fact that we saved 7.5 acre feet. The community helped us. That's amazing.
Yeah. Mr. Gambogi?
Further to what Lois said, after you gave your last presentation, I've been preaching the gospel according to Kay Siddell. And when I'm out in the community, I'm finding a lot of people still aren't aware. So I think Lois has some good ideas, but collectively, I think this is great stuff. I don't know if I mentioned at the last meeting, but I was driving up Senator Highway one day, and my eyes were in shock. I saw something I hadn't seen in 10 years since I left Illinois, and that was rolls of sod that people were putting down with a sprinkler system.
Oh.
Obviously, they didn't get the message. So this is great. I mean, this is fabulous. We just need to get the word out even more.
well, we are trying. Like you said, it was on the December message about the rebate program and gave them directions to that. And unfortunately, not everybody bothers to read the message. And in fact, someone even called me in January and said, "Why aren't you advertising this?" And I said, "Well, did you check the December water utility bill?" Because it was on there. So we do the best we can, but
Okay, you're working right now to get, was it an article in the Yavapai Contractor Association magazine? That
Yes,
will have information?
we will be putting in a new article in Building Yavapai. I just completed it this morning with some input from Brian, and I'm going to be sending that over to Sandy Griffiths, along with an $800 ad that we normally use, although I'm still waiting on Project MO to make the final printable copy for us on that $800 ad. It's been updated. And so, yeah, I have a free ad that we get that I rewrote for this.
We also
purpose.
advertised in women's, was it Prescott Women?
Yeah, Prescott Women Magazine.
year
We
with
did
the-
have an ad in it was the November issue, I believe, or November issue. There was an ad in that magazine as well.
But we'll investigate ways to get the word out even more.
Yeah.
Well, we want to help.
Yeah. There's nothing that we can't do to get the word out. We got to be creative.
Right.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you,
Appreciate that.
Kay.
And I did put a rain barrel message on the conservation, on the Facebook and Instagram today, or just a couple of days ago. There was a rain barrel message on Facebook and Instagram that Lynn posted for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item.
Presentation and update regarding the city's application to modify its designation of assured water supply.
Good morning, Subcommittee. This is Leslie Grazer, Water Resource Project Manager. I'm going to run you through this slide show as soon as it comes up and welcome any questions you may have. I do want to mention in your packet, to hopefully avoid confusion, what we put in the packet for you was the resolution and the first few pages of the application that was filed back in 2021. So you have a feel for what that looks like. The full complement is almost like a 3-inch binder that we send in of all the requirements. It's not just a couple pages like you see here. So let's move ahead. So I'll just go over the assured water supply, the DNO. We have we call it a couple different names. So a decision and order is the actual legal document that comes out. The other terms you'll hear is a designation of assured water supply. They're somewhat used interchangeably, but when we say a DNO, usually we're talking about the legal document that comes back out. And then what we did to modify and some of our next steps. So just a quick kind of catch you up. In 1998, the area was identified, the active management area was identified to be out of safe yield, and the state's assured water supply rules came into effect. So that's when the city decided they would like to be a designated provider, and they began that process. And in 1999 was the first decision order that the city held, and so it had just if we go back in time, we can see a block diagram that I'll show you next that just had 2 little blocks in it, and then it's grown over time in 2005 and then 2009. The city went back in. So we were due to go back in, and I think I'll just give you this quick picture. So a decision and order tells you about the different supply types you have. In more detail, it talks about your demands, but what you're basically trying to do is make sure your demands for your community for a certain time period can be met with the supplies that you have. So very simplified, our decision and order talks about groundwater supplies and how much is identified there, alternative supplies, which are the alternative pumping more groundwater, and those are your surface water and your effluent supplies. And then the other alternative water supply that came into pumping local groundwater is the importation of Big Chino water. And I probably said this too many times, so apologize if you've heard this before. We don't have an arrow connecting that because we don't have that supply physically moving into the city. So I wanted to make that clear many moons ago.
Leslie,
Yes, ma'am.
going back to the pipeline, the Big Chino.
Yes.
You have that 8,000 number. Isn't that supposed to be shared with Prescott Valley?
Yes, ma'am.
So half of that,
Just about half. Yep.
yeah, just about half comes to us, and then Prescott Valley is supposed to get the other
Portion.
part. Okay, thank you.
Correct. A lot of details in these discussions, and we'll try to move as quickly as we can, but we can definitely stop for questions along the way too. So why would we modify our decision and order? Well, it's because we had 2 conditions within it, the 2009 decision order, number 4 and number 5. I made number 5 very tiny because that's not what triggered our modification. What it was, it said if Prescott does not submit to the department on or before December 31st, 2019, evidence that ADEQ has issued an approval of construction, that's the AOC, for the pipeline, Prescott shall submit an application to modify this decision order designating Prescott as having an assured water supply when the sum, I thought there was an or in there, of our current committed demand. Yes, that's what it is. So current committed and projected 2-year demand exceeds 16,397 acre feet. Or, there's that or I was looking for, December 31st, 2021. So it's a two-step. So we did not have the approval of construction because the pipeline has not been constructed. And then they said, okay, if you don't have that approval, either your demand is going to be running up against this 16,397, or you're going to hit a time criteria. And so we hit that before we hit the volume. So if our pumping had shown, we were pumping 16,000 and change. We had commitments out there, and we had projected as well, that 2-year projected that led us to that 16,000. That would have been the trigger. But our actual trigger turned out to be December 31st, 2021. So we met that requirement and submitted on time a complete package. So our next steps, when you turn in your application to modify your decision and order, there's a time clock basically, and they have a certain number of days to decide if you are administratively complete. So did you file all the pieces of paper they asked you to file? Did you forget anything along the way? So that's administrative. So we cleared that hurdle. And then it's substantive. And so they're looking at the numbers. They're checking why you say you think you have this supply or this demand. There might be some other interconnects based on contracts that you have. Are you meeting your contract obligations? So we did receive a first deficiency letter, and we responded to that. As they were issuing the first deficiency letter, they said, well, there's going to be one coming behind it. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, what's that going to be? Well, they named that a supplementary deficiency letter. So we responded to that. And then we received what they called the second deficiency letter, and that's where we sit now. We are going to await ADWR's determination of if the application is complete once we respond to that deficiency letter. And then once it's deemed complete, we have received no more deficiency letters. Then we start the process of where the department will review and compile a document for us.
Leslie, I have a question. When you use the word deficiency letter, it sounds kind of harsh, like we've done something wrong, but they're just basically asking for more clarification and more information, correct?
Correct. So, it could be something wrong, but mostly I've been seeing that it's explaining to each other. It's interesting how the written word can sometimes come across very, very clearly, and then other times there's impressions that you need to work through. So from day one, I was trying to work very closely with our corresponding person over at the department to make sure that we stayed in step. But to your questions, the topics, I think that's what you're kind of asking about. I wrote these down so we'd have them very clear as day. So the city's current deficiency letter, they asked for a little more information on the city's determination of demands and their alignment with their annual report. So they're cross-checking our demands that we submitted, and also we file an annual report. And if those two aren't lining up, they're going to kind of stop and ask a little bit more. They needed clarifications to the physical availability of reclaimed supplies. So that would be what we collect back from our community, treat, and have available for recharge or direct use. They wanted to talk to us a little bit more about financial capability related to infrastructure that will be in place during this 20-year projected DNO. So we're looking from basically now out 20 years with this document. Let's see, consistency with management goals. So this would make no sense unless you're in the business, but basically what they're asking about is that we have some subdivisions that were preliminary platted in 1998. Until they go to final plat, they don't provide us a groundwater bump. And so that's sometimes very confusing and a little bit contentious sometimes. So we're
Mr.
working through
Gambogi,
that.
do you have a question?
If you could back that up a little bit, you said they don't
Rewind.
supply the groundwater.
Right. Yeah, and it's a very curious thing, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with any of the new members or existing members on this one. But what it is that when the area was, let's see if I can back up in time just enough. When the area was declared out of safe yield in 1999, they said no more growth on groundwater supplies, basically. Right. And so any new developments needed to be on the city's alternative water supplies, which was either surface water or reclaimed. We could show within our portfolio we had the ability to cover that new development in that manner. So, but state law didn't stop anybody. So some plats were underway, preliminary plats were underway, and then there was a rush. And so a lot of people rushed in. And so the best the department could do through existing statute and rule was to say, okay, we see your preliminary plat. Let's give you an actual example so it makes more sense. We had a lot of preliminary plats associated with Prescott Lakes. And so I'm not picking on anybody. It's just a real clear, subdivision, I think, that would work for this example. So some of them, it was interesting. Some of them were final platted. We had them as current demand. Others were being platted, and some came in as part of the rush. And so what the state says is, okay, well, I see your preliminary. When I see your final plat come in, then come talk to us, and we'll give you a bump in your groundwater block.
Yeah. And let me clarify, Leslie, wasn't there a lawsuit that caused a delay for about a year? And during that 1 year is when we had the big plat rush. It gave them more time.
Maybe there was some kind of litigation going on, but I think it was just there was a loophole. Seems like a very negative word, but that happens in written statutes. So there was the opportunity for people to continue to plat, and the state had to figure out what to do, and they couldn't just stop everybody. You just can't stop development. So that was the way it worked out. So I'd have to research that actually and see if there was actually a litigation going on at the time. But long story short, that's one of our items that we're working through with them because it's important for us to get it right on their end and on our side. We want to make sure we get the groundwater allowance increase in our portfolio that's allowed by statute. A couple other items were the Big Chino water supplies and the Granite Dell surface water right. We're also, they asked some additional questions. So we're compiling at this point, working with we had a very strong team submitting this, outside consultants that worked on it the last time the DNO was modified. So we're very fortunate to have those folks. And that's all I have for you today, unless you have any additional questions. Or happy to answer those if you want to work on it separately a little bit.
Leslie, I just had a question on your Part B demand estimate. It kind of looks over 20 years, kind of 2020 to 2040. And 14,529 acre feet per year from 2020 to 2040. That's what our total demand is projected to be.
Yes, so you're referring back to the packet, and I didn't put that on the screen. So it's our total annual demand. You said 14,529.54 is what we were determining. And that's a combination of current demand, so what's currently being pumped and needed, and this is potable and non-potable. Committed demand, so that's what we have for contracts that we said, we are going to serve you. And then we also have projected where we agreed to serve you, but you haven't really platted anything yet. So that's the rough number, Councilmember Roosing. Since we're in an active deficiency letter, we're going to see some of those numbers. That number's going to move around a little bit yet until we arm wrestle this all out.
Yeah, because if you convert that to acre feet per year, that's 290,580 acre feet per year. That's a pretty big number. And I was going to ask, how does the 100-year, this 100-year guarantee that the subdivisions are supposed to come up with, is that still enforced? Does that apply to this, or is this just two different things?
No, it's the assured water supply is for 100 years, but the decision and orders, they look at, sometimes you see them at 10 years, and then you come back in and check it. So they're not, to answer your question, we worked in various ways at the city. Once I was here and we had a little time to work with it, we built the worm. And so we run things out as far as we can, but the state's only going to look out 10 to 20 years. So the assured water supply for 100 years is not really looked at that 100-year horizon. Legally, it's looked at in smaller chunks, and we're required to come back in, which I think is actually very wise to
Yes, probably a lot more realistic, huh?
do. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet.
Oh, Brian?
This can get really complicated, so I just want to make sure it's understood. It's a smaller chunk time frame that basically ADWR wants us to come back at a time period, 10 to 20 years, and say, let's relook at this whole thing and make sure everything's in check. But what we put in that DNO for that time period, every single allocation that we put in there is for 100 years. In other words, if we give water to a Circle K, we're saying we're giving it to them for 100 years. We might have to come back in 10 years and recheck and make sure all the numbers are gone. But I just wanted to make that clarification because it can get kind of confusing. Everything that we're doing in our DNO is for 100 years. Yeah. We have to show that before we will get that legal document.
Thank you. One last question for Leslie. When do you think this process is going to be approved, be completed?
That is a very good question. So our goal, I think I was asked that we have this wrapped up in a year. So by the end of this calendar year. So every effort will be made to do that. We'll just have to see how the negotiations keep moving forward. And as I said, we turned around, well, I didn't say it actually. So the short answer is we're aiming for the end of this year. I wouldn't like to see it go any further than that, but we'll see.
And kind of to break that question up a little bit, so we're shooting for March to June to have all our ducks in a row with our consultants and all our answers, and then push back a submittal back to ADWR. After that, have the ducks in a row for that submittal, but then we'll have to do other things before we can submit. We have to go back in and work with other consultants who are doing our groundwater modeling based on our final demand calculations so that they can do the groundwater pumping and show that the groundwater model meets the requirement of not depleting the aquifer by a certain amount in that 100-year worth of pumping scenario. So there's 2 or 3 different components, and breaking them down, we're hopeful to have a submittal by the end of the year, but we're looking at more towards the middle of this year of having everything kind of in place to go in with that submittal.
One question I have, since we have partnered with Prescott Valley on the Big Chino pipeline, are they included in this process? Are they bearing any of the costs, or are we keeping them in the picture, or what's going on over there?
They're always in the picture because we're partnered with them on portions of it, but the city's ultimately responsible to get their decision order through the process. But they have been supportive, wanting to talk. There have been some meetings early last year that they participated in. Mm-hmm. So,
group effort.
The full portfolio is very large, and then there's a portion of it that is directly tied to Prescott Valley. So that helps focus it a little bit.
Okay. Lois, do you have any comments? Okay. Ted, do you have any comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Next item.
General announcements from staff.
Good morning, Subcommittee again. It's Kay Sitto with Public Works Department. We have a Prescott Regional SciTech Fest event scheduled for March 2nd of 2024 from 10 to 3 p.m. And the city has contributed $1,000 towards this. It's a grant that we're hoping they would be able to spend as they see fit. So they're planning to buy some toys off the internet and maybe even cover some printing costs with that $1,000. So,
It's always good to see more education geared towards science.
yes, I agree. And this is a big year for them because it's the 10th annual event, and it is free admission. So we hope to see as many people there as we can, but I'll be there. And I think Leslie will be too, and maybe Brian. So we all intend to be present for the event on March 2nd, 2024.
Okay, thank you.
No more comments.
Okay, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.